Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Closer Look, the show dedicated to bringing you the facts. We ask the questions no one else will, and we get the answers that no one else can. I'm Mirabina Apia. Thanks so much for joining us. Agriculture is the lifeblood of a nation. It feeds us. It sustains us. The story of our food, what we eat, how and where we grow it, is a major part of our national identity. It is a major part of who we are as a people. This is why the issue of food security, or rather food insecurity, remains a high priority issue for governments across the globe. Agriculture as an industry can and should be a major economic driver as well. The potential for job creation and entrepreneurship is there. The question is, are we taking full advantage? Now, whether or not the concept of food security is at the forefront of the minds of many Bahamians, one thing is for certain. Food security is a key component of our national development, and the agricultural sector plays a vital role in ensuring that the food we eat is not only readily available to all Bahamians, but that the food we access is safe for consumption as well. Now, I think an equally important conversation is the impact of climate change on our ability to grow crops. Tonight, we talk to some of the sector's movers and shakers about the journey from the farmer's field to the dinner table. We're talking everything from access to sustainability. Later on, we'll hear from the man at the helm, Agriculture Minister, the Honorable Clay Sweeting. Stay tuned. Our deep dive into the state of agriculture in the country begins on the other side of the break. Health is your complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not just the absence of disease. It is an important part of our human rights and ability to live dignified lives. This right to care goes beyond experiences in a doctor's office or at a pharmacist's window. Health includes the right to access safe water and sanitation to keep our hands clean and avoid spreading diseases. Adequate nutrition to keep our bodies strong and healthy. Adequate housing to shelter us from the intense changes in our climate. Secure working and environmental conditions to protect us from work-related accidents, and access to accurate information and education for better health decision-making. These are rights and not privileges to protect and promote optimum human health at every stage of life. This message is brought to you by the PAHO WHO, Bahamas and Turks and Caicos Islands, Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the Healthy Bahamas Coalition. Welcome back. Farming is both an art and a science. It's also a way of life, one that has been passed down from generation to generation. If we as a country are serious about creating a more sustainable future for ourselves and our children, then we need to start by taking care of our own backyard. I had the opportunity to sit down with one of the country's leading agricultural consultants and advocates, Dion Gibson. Let's take a closer look at our conversation with Gibby the farmer.
You know, the story of food helps you understand where your food comes from. When you look at what we eat, where it comes from, that's how we can really begin to start the conversation of, okay, what do we need to grow to meet our dietary needs?
Meet Dion Gibson, better known as Gibby the farmer. As one of the country's leading agricultural consultants, Gibson is a huge advocate for growing your own food. The ultimate goal, he says, is food security. As it stands, the Bahamas currently spends a staggering $1 billion on imported food supply. While the government is actively working to reduce that bill by some 25%, startling statistics suggest that 1 in every 3 people in the Bahamas face some level of food insecurity. Now, according to Gibson, the Bahamas should ideally be able to produce up to 75% of the food consumed locally. But first, he says several things will have to change if that reality is to be achieved.
It will require a few things. We'll have to change our diet to a degree, because we eat a very Americanized, very African, very Chinese diet. You know, as I often tell people, we don't grow rice in the Bahamas. Why is rice a staple for us? This region is good at growing root crops, legumes, your beans and peas. And if you look around the world, in places where they eat a local diet, let's take Africa or even Latin America, for example, heavy on corn, heavy on beans, heavy on cassava. These things all grow here. I also think livestock is not focused on enough in the country. You know, we can produce meat. Animals are easier to manipulate than plants are. You can create an environment for an animal, whereas the atmosphere kind of dictates what happens with plants a lot of the time.
As for the future of the industry, Gibby says young farmers must approach food and livestock production with a certain level of business acumen.
I think that we tend to rely on the government heavily and expect the government to sell for us or buy from us. However, the restaurants out there want local food. If you can't produce 500 pounds of a given crop a week, but you can produce 50 or 60, find a smaller restaurant, find a smaller grocer or convenience store, a little mom and pop shop in your settlement. If you're on the family island, you drive around New Providence, you can find a dozen of them in every inner city community that I'm sure will purchase from you. And so it's a start. And when you begin to be able to market your own produce, then we get more out there, and it's getting to the masses easier.
Whether you consider yourself a subsistence farmer or just someone with a green thumb, one thing is certain. You can begin to grow the foods that you consume, because food security starts at home. Stay with us. We have more of a closer look after this.
We all have rough days. But it's okay not to feel okay.
The government has been working toward the national goal of food security. Those efforts have consistently been plagued by an ever-present villain: climate change. And you don't have to be a farmer or an agricultural consultant to understand how rising temperatures have and continue to impact our ability to sustain a thriving agricultural sector. And it's not just here at home. Around the world, climate change is being felt in the form of floods and droughts. It's even impacting when and where certain crops can now be grown. Back in August, A Closer Look took you behind the scenes of the region's first Caribbean conference on climate change. The sessions, which attracted government officials and stakeholders from around the region, was a precursor to COP27 in Egypt. Now, if you were following our extensive coverage, then you also recall that young Bahamians in particular were taking a very strong stand on the subject. For more of the role of young people in the fight against the climate crisis, we go to our OPM correspondent, Sandra Kemp, for a closer look.
A talented batch of young people are currently representing the Bahamas at this year's United Nations Conference on Climate Change, COP27, in Egypt. Their participation as winners of the Office of the Prime Minister's Youth Climate Competition, financially sponsored by Corporate Bahamas, is just part of the government's focus on finding innovative solutions to the threat of rising global temperatures and the impact they have on small island developing states like the Bahamas. The opportunity for young people to participate in this year's conference is proof that more and more young Bahamians are passionate advocates for our country's future. For Delon Evans, Jasmine Cawley, Kasia Knowles, and Michaela Smith, representing the Bahamas is their chance to have their voices heard on the world stage. We caught up with them just before they left the country to talk about what they hope to accomplish.
As a nation, called small nation, and although we're a small nation, we're affected majorly by carbon emissions and climate change. So it's important that we have a voice in the situation and make solutions to help us move away from our current path.
Being one of the first Bahamians to represent the Bahamas at COI is amazing. We had our first regional COI this year, so it's just another level to be to a more global atmosphere. At the regional call we got to talk to a lot of Caribbean islands, and to bring the Bahamian perspective to the global arena is amazing.
I am hoping to learn more and going there open-minded. So I will hear different voices from different places. This is my first time going to a global conference. So it's a new experience. I am hoping that I can bring back something that I can use to help with the issue of climate change.
I'm hoping to get more knowledge about it and how it will affect us, and more information about how we can spread awareness and possibly stop climate change.
A closer look continues in just a moment.
We are no stranger to loss. However, recently, we have been facing the death of so many loved ones and friends. The loss causes us to experience grief, and grief is a natural emotional response, and it could take days, months, and even years to work through the feelings. If you're experiencing loss right now, you may be experiencing denial, anger of how that had happened, or guilt of it all around you, and then depression, deep sadness, and then finally acceptance, accepting the loss and willingness to move on. Remember, there is hope for you, and you don't have to go through this alone. Let's make mental health a reality for all.
Back, you're watching A Closer Look. I'm Aravina Apia. Thanks so much for joining us. Since taking office in September of 2021, our next guest has been on a mission to make agriculture sexy again. I'm very excited to hear him explain exactly what that means. Please welcome to the show the Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries, the Honorable Clay Sweeting. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you, Aravina, for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So, Minister, let's jump right in. What does it mean, in your opinion? How do we make agriculture sexy to a new generation of Bahamians?
Well, what's so funny about that is, when I took office, I was interviewed concerning agriculture and where I wanted to take it and my vision for food security. And I said, look, for me, as a young individual whose grandfather was a farmer, it seemed that we skipped generations in that regard. So for me, I felt like we need to find a way to make agriculture more appealing, and then I said more sexy, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And it took flight.
It has stuck.
Yeah.
That has clearly become what you're known for. So how do we make agriculture more appealing to Bahamians?
So for me, I think it's a few things. So for agriculture, we need to find ways to get young people and women involved in the sector. And in order to do that, you got to look at more ingenious, innovative, technological ways to farm. It's not the same way, old way of doing things, the slash and burn. The reality is young people want to make money for their households. In order to do that, we got to find business-ready initiatives through farming in order to reach that goal. So we're looking at innovative ways such as vertical farming, containerized farming. We're looking at poultry, production of eggs, broilers. So we're trying to find ways where young people could get involved, but not just get involved and have this passion for farming, because nobody wants to have a passion for an industry and lose money. So you got to find ways to say, look, you can do this and make money, support your family, send your children to school. And that's what we're trying to do at the ministry.
So since taking office, have you seen the level of interest grow? Have you seen more people? You spoke to having more women join the industry. Have you seen that interest grow at all?
Well, most definitely. Every quarter we have something called the Farmer's Voice, where myself, the team at BAMC, the team at BIC, also BAFSA, engage farmers across the country on a Zoom call. And ironically, around 60% are women on the call who's interested in farming, because farming encapsulates so many different things, right? It's not just growing bananas. It's also harvesting honey, where we have a lot of women involved in that sector. Containerized farms, we have some of the smartest women in this country involved in that technological field. So, you know, for me, I'm very proud of where we're going. We have a long way to go, but, you know, I think every success is a success towards that step.
You spoke about sort of this journey toward, you know, where you'd like to see agriculture be, and you've touched a bit on what the government has been doing in terms of providing support. Can you speak specifically to some of the initiatives that you're most proud of in terms of the support that's being given to local farmers?
Right. So we've done so much in the ministry, and I'd be here a long time if I spoke about, but some of the major initiatives, for one, would be the most recent pilot project, which was the Climate Smart Agricultural Grant. So what that would help to show persons that you can solarize your farms, you can use climate smart agriculture, use innovation and technology in the sector. So that we started a pilot project that we're also launching in January, the main grant project, which will be something that I'm excited about. We also worked along with SBDC to launch over $1 million in grant subsidy to farmers who are interested in different things such as poultry, and also to touch the family islands as well. We eliminated import duties on parts for farmers. So whether they want to repair their tractors, which used to be 45% duty, we eliminated the duty on that. We also have other subsidies involved, duty-free concessions. So it's a lot of things going on. We've also ensured that BAMC is up and running. So we're doing a lot of things there where persons could reach out to BAMC for advice, for technological assistance, and we're doing a seed bank there, a poultry farm there. So we have a lot of things going on with a lot of my entities, including BIC as well.
I know one of the major thrusts, for your ministry and for the government as a whole has been addressing the issue of food insecurity. So let's talk about that a little bit. First, can we define what food insecurity is?
So for me, I think during the pandemic, we've seen the challenge where persons had issues getting food, right? The government launched a food program at the time. We had issues importing food. And even now, post-pandemic, with external factors, we're now seeing a rise in food costs. We've seen a study the other day where 1 in every 4 person in this country is concerned about whether or not they're going to eat. So for me, it's being able to be secure where you're able to feed your people. Right now, we import over 90% of the food we consume. We are aiming to reduce 25% by 2025, along with other CARICOM countries. That's a commitment that we're trying to facilitate. But for me, I think it's more than agriculture. It's a passion. It's something where you want to touch the people, and it's a national pride thing for me as well.
Minister, what would you say is one of the biggest challenges toward reaching the goal of food security in the 21st century Bahamas?
Right. So for me, I think that in order for us to reach that attainable goal of food security, is being able to realize that while we want to increase a passion for farming, which I think we've done a good job recently in the past year of doing so, especially with persons getting involved in farming, it's also finding those niches of bankable products where you have young people and women involved in sectors where they can actually make money in the sectors that they're passionate about. People need to be able to feed their families. They need to be able to pay their electricity bill. They need to be able to pay their school fees, send their children to college, and all these other factors that they experience. In order to get to that point and get people involved, the government has to try to provide some assistance and guidance and the support. So the government, with the support that we're providing, also needs assistance from people in the communities, from wholesalers and retailers and distributors to help to support the initiatives that the government is trying to do. We have good working relationships with those industries, and we're looking to help to do that. We have some good projects in the pipeline. that we'll announce in the new year or maybe before, that can help to get us to that point of reducing our import bill.
You're headed to COP27, which is the conference on climate change. Let's talk about how food security and climate change are interwoven, how those two things are linked together.
Right, so I'm glad you asked that. So with the agriculture, you have to find ways to integrate climate smart agriculture, which is one of the grants that we just initiated last week, which helps to tie into that. So especially in the Bahamas, you have a lot of areas where farmers don't have access to water. How do they have that? You can provide solarized pumps. How do you provide climate smart agriculture initiatives such as containerized farms or vertical farming? So these are initiatives, and what's exciting about climate smart agriculture that ties into COP is that most of these initiatives help to provide young people and women in the sector. So for vertical farming, it's much easier to farm. You don't have to have that manual, hard labor to have those kind of production facilities. We have some companies in the Bahamas that's already started to integrate it. We actually have a young individual at BAMSI who is farming feed for chickens and for livestock out of containers.
Nice.
And this is a Bahamian who's doing this, you know. And so in these containerized farms, you're recycling the water, you're using LEDs, you can solarize the containers, so that all of that ties into climate change and how we can help to mitigate the negative connotations from that.
So, Minister, I guess my final question to you would be, where do you see the industry in, say, 5 to 10 years? And how can interested Bahamians really position themselves to take advantage of the opportunities that you've spoken about today?
So, for me, I'm trying to lay the foundation, along with my team, through the ministry, to help to alleviate the burden of food insecurity in this country. I think a lot of times we get caught up in what has been and what's to come. But the reality is we're in the now, and we have to live for the now. And the initiatives that we're trying to put in place can help to lay the foundation of where we want to go. The Prime Minister is very passionate about food and feeding our people. The Ministry of Agriculture seconded the budget, I think, for the first time in history of governance. So that speaks to his support and his commitment to not just the industry or the ministry, but to the people of this country and to how we're going to feed ourselves. I recommend that Bahamians continue to follow our Facebook page and our social media platforms to keep in touch with the initiatives that we're launching, because we're continuing to launch new projects all the time, and we're looking to help to support farmers in any ways that we can. I'm excited about the future. We have a good team that's looking to assist farmers and fishermen in any way that's possible. And as we continue and to lay these building blocks, we hope to continue to build upon them. And for me, it's laying a foundation where no matter if administrations change, that they see the importance of what we've done, not just as a government and as a ministry, but as a nation, that they will continue to build upon what we've done. And to say, look, this is important not just for us as a government, for the people of this nation, how we move towards food security.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being here, Minister.
Thank you.
There's more of a closer look when we come back. Health is your complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not just the absence of disease. It is an important part of our human rights and ability to live dignified lives. This right to care goes beyond experiences in a doctor's office or at a pharmacist's window. Health includes the right to access safe water and sanitation to keep our hands clean and avoid spreading diseases. Adequate nutrition to keep our bodies strong and healthy. Adequate housing to shelter us from the intense changes in our climate. Secure working and environmental conditions to protect us from work-related accidents, and access to accurate information and education for better health decision-making. These are rights and not privileges to protect and promote optimum human health at every stage of life. This message is brought to you by the PAHO WHO, Bahamas and Turks and Caicos Islands, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the Healthy Bahamas Coalition. I want you to imagine a Bahamas where the produce that you buy is all locally grown and locally sourced, where the eggs you eat come from a farmer that you know and trust. A Bahamas where we grow the foods that we eat. It's an attainable goal for sure, but as you've heard, the road to food security will take the collective effort of all of us, the farmers, the grocers, and the consumers. Now, if you're like me and you don't have a green thumb, then fear not, because as you've also heard, there are countless resources available to you to help you get started. In the words of the minister, grow now so you can feed tomorrow. Till next time, Bahamas, I'm Aravina Apia. Good night.